Hello and welcome. Today we have a special artist spotlight for you where we are talking to Karen Eckmeier and seeing her beautiful work. Karen Eckmeier, aka the Quilted Lizard, is an award-winning quilter, international teacher, author, and pattern designer. With a background in drawing but no sewing experience, Karen taught herself how to sew in order to make her first quilt. That was over 30 years ago, and she's been hooked on fabric ever since. Nature often inspires her work, and she shows the viewer what she feels in lines and colors. Her art is happy and upbeat, concentrating on the positive and whimsical side of life. As you can tell from the titles of her books, Happy Villages, Accidental Landscapes, Wiggles and Waves, and Wearable Waves, Karen's workshops emphasize her no-stress approach to playing with fabric, whether it be raw edge collage or her layered top stitching techniques. Students always go home with an "I can do that" attitude. Welcome, Karen. I am so excited to talk to you today. Thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Well, I just totally fell in love with your work. I love your palettes, and your designs are just really, really interesting. And I think your particular aesthetic is really beautiful and interesting and very unique, which is always exciting to see. I'd love to hear how you got started.
I can remember the day it all started. My husband and I we had a new house and we wanted to buy a quilt for a bed. And we went to a craft show, and it was between a scrappy Star of Bethlehem or a scrappy log cabin. Well, we chose a Star of Bethlehem. It doesn't matter which. It was all hand quilted. I got it home. I couldn't stop touching the hand quilting. Just that texture was just driving me nuts. And I liked all the calicos, the blue and whites and all. That was fine. But I thought, oh, good grief. In order for me to get to this quilting stuff that I really want to do, I have to learn how to sew. And I didn't know how to do it. So eventually I said, okay. I started looking at Amish quilts and blocks and all. The smart thing would have been to take a class, but no, I like
Sure.
to do things my own way.
Of course.
And I figured since I could draw, I've been taking art lessons since I was 6 years old, private lessons, and up through to kindergarten, teenager, and to college. So I figured, how hard can this quilting stuff be? So I started drawing, and I was using scissors. I was doing my serial cardboard templates and all. Didn't know about 1/4-inch seam allowances, but I was throwing stuff together and I was learning. And I thought, if anybody ever matches a point, it must be sheer accident, because none of mine were going together. But everybody in the house got a bed quilt. I ran out of beds, so I started filling the walls with quilts. And so after a while, I learned to sew. I got made curtains and made placemats. And then I thought, wow, I'd really like to do something on my own. And I read a book by Mia Rosman called Freedom in Design. And it's kind of like what Ruth McDowell does, that whatever doodle you have or drawing, you transfer it to freezer paper, and your points match, and you're just following your own thing. I thought, this is for me. And so I just jumped into that. And of course, I don't like anything that's got straight lines. I liked, even my first quilt was like a double wedding ring. You don't start out.
I know, for a first quilt.
Yeah, one of the first. I mean, I didn't know anything. I mean, ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah.
I did have no idea what the rules were. So I started doing curve piecing, and I fell in love with that. And then I started to take some classes with, the big quilt teachers. And I took a class with Nancy Crow for a week. And she said, a real artist doesn't worry about the end product. It's about the journey.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, good grief, I'm not an artist. I stay in my safety zone. I draw my doodle or my pattern. I go shopping for fabric, which is fun. And then I make the piece, and I knew exactly what I was going to end up with. And so that's when I decided it was time to loosen up, Karen, and just try something new. And it was so scary for me. And
Was it?
that's kind of how I got into the improvisational piecing and all. I created my background, and then I just wanted to loosen up.
Yeah. What was scary, do you think? Was it just not
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 being sure what the end result was going to be, or
Yeah,
worried
I mean, to
about
spend all that
failing?
time and
Hmm.
money and then cutting into a fabric and not knowing what you're going to do with it. I mean, really, quilters just don't do that. Yeah, it was very, and it still is scary. I can't say it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's still an adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it gets less scary.
I think so. And
Yeah.
there are some times when I go back to the pencil and paper and draw something out, and it still changes.
Yeah.
But I'm okay to let it happen now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, your style now, the work that we've been showing photos of, and we'll be seeing more photos of, I would say is really distinctive. And my guess would be that your work didn't look like what it looks like now back when you were beginning, back when after you took Nancy Crow's class and you started really trying to break out of your box and trying new things. I'd love to hear a little bit just about kind of how your work evolved,
Yeah,
or maybe certain pieces kind of show that evolution.
I think certain pieces do.
Hmm.
I did a series of positive energy pieces that kind of show how it evolved. And I think when I first started, I just wanted to keep doing curves, but I didn't want to do them pieced way. So I just wanted something was more spontaneous and quicker. So that's how, well, the landscapes happened accidentally.
Hmm.
I call them little random roses or twirls. They happen accident. They're not really roses, but they kind of look like flowers or logs. And then by accident, pretty much everything I do is by accident. One of these curved things was not working, and I didn't want to throw the fabrics away. And I started playing with these architectural shapes. And I thought I was going to do an abstract design because that's really what I prefer, real abstract. They turned into little villages as soon as I put a little square, and if it had a roof, it became a village. And the same with the landscapes. Two different techniques. One is the top stitch piecing with the edges turned under. The other is raw edge collage with tulle. But they're very. You just start out with one thing, and one you get a landscape, the other you get a village. And so that was the improvisational. And so I kind of go back and forth between those two techniques. And then now I'm combining them a lot too.
Mm. Which particular work is combining them?
I did one that was called Around the Block, and it was a large log cabin,
Mhm.
wacky, it's even hard to say that, with curves, the logs, and then I put little tiny villages in each one. People love that one. But yeah, I tried to, usually I kind of go back and forth between the two techniques because I get tired of, like, I just finished one with top stitch piecing, so I'm tired of that for a while. So I think next one I'll do is a fabric collage, and then I go back and forth.
Yeah. So then you were saying, I'd love to hear more about the accidental. I know probably a lot of quilters are out there thinking, how on earth did she make those beautiful quilts by accident? How
Yeah,
did that happen? How does that process look? And then how do you come up with these happy accidents?
yeah. Well, the landscapes, yeah, when I even start the class, I say accidental landscape. I mean, really, are we making a landscape or not? The accident is, I've done all the planning for everybody and the colors and all. So we cut up all these strips, and it's how they go together that really is pure serendipity. And it's the same with the villages. For that, I give them a template. We start with all the same shapes of 10 different colors and that contrast with value. And it's the way you put them together. It creates a total mess. And then you start putting rooftops on it, and this little village appears. So that part is not accidental, but I call it magic. It's just like, ooh, a little village appears. Or with the landscapes, oh, layers are going together and it looks like a landscape. So, but when I my work, my bigger stuff, I don't know. What's the difference between accidental and improv, right? I
Yeah.
don't know. Fine
Yeah.
line there.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot of just kind of going. I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit about your process when you're starting something new, like maybe your first village or, any kind of new piece. Do you start with just kind of a vague idea and then just start kind of playing around? Or do you just say, you know what, I want to play with curves and then start putting them and realize, oh my goodness, this looks like something else?
I start more with, say I want to do water. I just start with the colors of water.
Okay.
Maybe I want to add rocks in there. So add the colors of rocks. And then I do it in a gradation. So I always have a gradation of 6. I don't know why people say, oh, it shouldn't be an even number, but I like 2 lights, 2 mediums, 2 darks. That's hard enough to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like the landscapes, I could just pick a favorite fabric and pull the palette of, the colors from, what did I say, a favorite fabric, a print, and just pull that palette and then just start cutting the strips and let it go together and just be surprised where it takes you.
Mm-hmm.
The same with the village. I really don't know what it's going to look like until the end. And that drives my students nuts. And even when I make a new one, I have to say, it's okay, Karen, you don't know where you're going. It's okay.
Yeah. So then it seems like you start with one little nugget of an idea and just kind of start exploring that and building.
Concept. Yeah, just a concept.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's either a color palette, a place, could be anything.
Yeah. And I think that's really inspiring to hear because I'm sure so many people would look at your work and it looks very planned and very thoughtful because it's just beautiful and you're very masterful at what you do. And I'm sure so many people would look and think, well, she must meticulously plan out every single little thing. But it seems like a lot of it is just built, just built
Yeah,
in
not
this
paid.
improvisational way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I did curve piecing, it had to be all figured out.
Right.
So this and planned, and no, I can't, which is good. It's good. It causes some sleepless nights, but
Yeah, I
I'm
love that.
designing.
I love so Karen is teaching in Meander this month. Yeah, she's our featured teacher, and she taught us her accidental landscape technique, her top stitch, her curvy and top stitch tech. What do you call it exactly?
A layered top stitch piecing or layered waves.
Right. Right. And what I loved about that was it's not the traditional way that you've been taught to piece curves, which
No.
can be, especially if you're trying to do it in this improvisational way, can be really challenging. But her layered and top stitching technique just made it so much easier where you can approach it in this very explorational, manner.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Your color palettes are also just incredible. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you typically pull fabrics for your palette. Do you just start with one little bit? Do you pull the entire palette? How do you approach that? And it seems like you like to do lights, 2 mediums, 2 darks. Is that
Generally, yeah, usually. Um, I'm basically terrible with color. I think in value. For many years, my medium of choice is pen and ink.
mm-hmm.
And so I think in 10 values of white to black. That's how my brain thinks.
Right.
Ansel Adams, black and white photography, he had 10 values of black. So I basically figure it all out in values. And so it could be 20 values, 30 values, different fabrics and all. But if the values are okay, I always only draw it out in pencil. Then the colors fall into place. And people always think I have a good sense of color, and I don't. I don't even pass the color test at the eye doctor's office. I don't see the difference between red and green. So I go high contrast.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether I should admit that or not, but it seems to work.
I would
Although
have to argue with you that you don't have a good sense of color. I wonder, is it just that you have a natural eye for color and so you don't even notice or have to think about color theory beyond value?
I think I just go for higher contrast and what I like.
Yeah.
I think that helps. I mean, you know, I did a black and white quilt, and a friend said, "Why is there a little bit of green and red there?" You know, people think I'm just really brilliant. Wow, look, she put that in there for. No, I didn't mean to put it in there. So it seems to work for me, but I know it's
And then you
how
get lots of these happy accidents with color as well, it seems.
I do. Oh, sometimes I don't. You know, there's failures here and there. You know, just because they don't always work out, but usually they do.
Okay. So do you, I mean, in terms of, I always teach whenever I teach color that any hue can go with any other hue. It's all about the tone that you choose. So do
Mm-hmm.
you think that you're attracted to these really saturated, vibrant tones? And although not all your work is super saturated, but you
No,
kind of stick with lower saturation, higher saturation, or do you just let it all mix together?
I kind of let it all mix together.
Yeah.
I do. And I know quilters are afraid to mix batiks and cottons and all that kind of stuff. They're fabric, use them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I've got a lot of different color palettes I like to work in.
I love it.
I don't think the ones that are probably more popular are the more saturated because people are drawn to those. But the ones that if you went up to my living room, you'd see it's very subdued, very grayed, greens and all.
Yeah. So then you just go with your gut and you really enjoy that high contrast
Yeah.
with those values. So just for those of you who are getting mixed up on the value just means darkness or lightness of a
Hmm.
color. And so you just play around with value and high contrast.
Yeah, and if possible, I like to have some place that like has a glow, that it just has an inner glow. And I think the Village for All Seasons, you know, as it goes from winter to spring to summer to fall, that the summer spring part, yeah, that one kind of glows, and a couple others. So I try to go for that and movement and energy and if I can do that in lines and colors, that's usually where I'm what I'm trying to do in an abstract way, unless I'm doing a village or a landscape. And the landscapes I only do tiny, so I really only teach those and give them as presents and all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you teach accidental landscapes as well as your happy villages. Do you have other workshops that you teach?
I have a couple other workshops that introduce that top stitch piecing, and so that would be the color twists and leaves. So we can do this abstract twirl, or these positive negative leaves. I always like a positive negative kind of interaction. And then the other one is a large layered log cabin. So you could put a little village in there. You could put a really funky fabric that's got a great print, and so all the logs are curvy and points are not allowed to match. And there's no rulers used in my class. People
Oh,
bring them and put that ruler away.
I love it.
So yeah, my classes they're fun for me and the student. So I think people know that when I teach it because I still have a blast with it and sharing what I love to do.
Yeah. So is that your favorite or one of your favorite things about what you do is teaching?
It really is. I
Mhm.
really love it. I love to help people get out of their comfort zone. They arrive in class, oh, I haven't slept yet, I'm nervous, and it's okay. And just to see them at the end of the day, so happy, and then they realize they've done something artistic and they've never trusted themselves to do that before. That's just like the best. And for me, they're not, if I teach a beach class and I give everybody a kit, everyone looks different.
Yeah.
You might know they took my class, but they're different sizes, they add different details, and that's nice for them. It's nice for me. They didn't walk out with, we have 20 identical perfect little copies of the teacher's work, because there's no way to make a mistake. There's no failure. Everybody is happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that makes me happy.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think because it's a very different type of workshop that you offer. And what do you think is the hardest thing for some of your students who maybe struggle kind of getting out of their comfort zone or out of their box?
About the same thing I had trouble with, not planning.
Yeah.
They want to plan it out. And I say, we were going to, I just have to do. And I said, if I see you planning, I'm going to come around and just take it all apart. I never do that, but I threaten to do it. They just can't resist the urge to plan. And that's really the hardest for them. Just loosen up, let go. I've done the work for you. It's okay. And again, they can't make a mistake. And I'll prove you wrong. I bet you I can be the first student to make a mistake, and nobody's done it yet. All good.
I love that. I love that. Well, it sounds, yeah, like everybody just walks away, probably feeling lighter and just a little bit.
I think so. And they have a one-of-a-kind piece of art.
Yeah. I love that. Well, do you have any particular tips for quilters who are trying out your techniques for the first time, trying improv or your specific techniques?
My specific, just really come with an open mind and don't overthink things. As adults, we overthink it. A lot of people take my class and they'll teach their grandchildren or grandnephews or nieces. The kids just do it.
Yep.
And that's the best thing. Just do it. No expectation. You don't even have to finish it.
Yeah.
It might be a landscape class or it might be a village class, but if you don't finish it, it's not a UFO. It's not an unfinished object.
Right.
You're learning the technique. You can do anything with either of them, which they have so many possibilities.
Yeah, I love that because there's such an emphasis in the quilt world on finishing every single thing that you start.
Yeah.
But that's not what artists do. Part of it is just an experiment, just to kind of play around, learn something, explore a concept, and then you learn something, and then maybe you're done with that and it served its purpose and you can set it aside. I always encourage in Neander, we have experiment bins in our studio where any experiments that we don't necessarily want to finish, that's fine. We throw it in the experiment bin and we might use it for, an improv project later on or,
Perfect. That's great.
Yeah.
I might do that too. I like that.
Yeah. I love too your point about kids and how they'll just get going.
Do anything. Yeah.
They're not sitting there stressed and worried. What if it looks terrible? What if what if I'm wasting fabric?
They don't care. They just do it. They just do it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, we got in our heads that it needs to be right and perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. That little person, that little critic that sits on our shoulder says, "What are you doing?"
Get off of it.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any tips for quilters that are trying to develop their own style, to grow as an artist and get outside of their own box?
Yeah. Take a lot of technique classes, like we talked about. Don't worry about finishing. Take classes that aren't related to quilting. Take painting. Do other things, and read about and look at other artists, different mediums too, whether it's sculpture or pastel. But what doesn't matter, and then ask themselves, why do I like that artist? What do I like about their style? What don't I like? Behind me I have a bookshelf, 6 shelves. Only one of them has to do with quilting. The rest is everything else. And I find when we quilt, we sometimes get a little too focused on just quilting. So if we open up our world and take other classes, like I did a hand drumming class, just because when your business becomes your hobby, you need to do other things.
Yes.
That was probably inspiration for 2 of my favorite quilts, a hand drumming class.
Really?
So just or maybe just think about what the favorite things they like to do. I mean, I like to hike, I like to bicycle, and then you bring those hobbies into your work, because if what you love, you want to express, and you know it best, and don't stick with one idea. Combine a whole bunch of ideas. Not to decide is to decide. And keep journals. I keep a journal. One of my, I forget which quilt teacher told me, she keeps them and for years and years, and then she'll go back and she'll see if there's a trend or what were the common elements. And I sometimes when I'm stuck, I'll just go through and oh, I see that one repeating. That idea wants its voice heard, and then I do that a lot. So keep a journal. Um, Look at other artists, other mediums.
Yeah.
I think, and then eventually your voice will come through. And again, like you said, I have a distinctive style. I don't think I do, but I have some common threads, whether it's curves or I go for energy and movement and light. And one of my friends a long time ago, I mean, I was only quilting a couple of years, she said, Karen, I always know your quilts. I said, how could you possibly know my quilts? She says, they're happy. They have a good energy. And I thought, well, that's nice, but I don't know. I don't think they're recognizable.
I totally see that. I see that energy in all of those quilts and the curves and the palette that you choose. Even as they change, you can still see it's put together by the same artist, I think.
That's funny. That's cool. But I didn't plan that,
Yeah.
Because some series are definitely part of a series, and you can see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. And I love your advice about bringing in other influences into your creative practice, because a lot of people, want to develop their own style and they want their work to look like them and be an expression of their own creativity. But if you're only looking at other quilters and rather than other forms of inspiration, your work is going to look like everybody else's.
Yeah.
But if you're bringing in those other things that inspire you, that light you up, that make you you, and figure out how to weave that and play around with that in your work, make magic happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's inspiring you right now?
I'm a blank canvas right now.
Yeah.
I just finished 5 months working on a piece.
Wow.
And I have a lot of energy, and I like to be working one quilt right after another. But there's Julia Cameron, she wrote Vein of Gold in the Artist's Way.
Yeah.
She called, she has a name for it. It's a season of whatever. I have to fill the creative well right now because I've drained it so heavily on this last piece I did. And it's not that I don't have a lot of ideas. I just don't know which one I really want to put myself into, because as you know, when you do it, it's not 100%, it's 110, 120%. And everything else falls to the wayside once I start working on a piece. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but I think I just need to give myself a little break right now. So, I mean, and a lot of people call it, oh, you're stuck, or writer's block, or it's not. It's
all part of the process.
And my husband, he kind of made me realize. He said, you cannot just keep churning stuff out. You have to rest. So I was outside working in the woods today and rock gardening and doing everything but quilting, just to fill that creative well. The ideals will, it might happen this afternoon. I don't know, but I'm right now at that rest period.
That's beautiful.
And that's okay too. I used to just beat myself up about it. I get low and restless. Oh, how can I be an artist? I'm not working on something right this very minute, because that's my nature. I want to be doing something all the time. But it's okay not to be.
Yeah, I think that's really important to hear for other people, and then to practice and give, because a lot of times we're willing to give other people grace. Oh, honey, you need to rest. You need take some time off, but then not so much ourselves.
Yeah,
and it's a cyclical thing, the creative process.
It is.
Like the seasons, in the winter everything calms down, and the field's life fallow. Is that the word? What's the word?
I think so. Yeah.
That's good. And then, because you need that time because there's so much then going on underneath the ground, roots are happening and all of these, they're storing up energy, all the things that happen during winter. And then spring, we get that little spark of energy. And then, during the summer, everything's booming, and then we're wrapping things up, and then we have to go back into that place of rest. So I think that's really important to allow yourself Um,
Yeah, and it's not easy to.
no, it's
Yeah.
not, because we're in a culture where
Mm-hmm.
get some
Yeah.
stuff done,
Yeah. You
get
just
to work.
wrote a book. What's your next book? You know, just this pressure. So we have to be gentle on ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Well, what, where could people find out more about you, or contact you if they want you to come teach at their guild, or if they want to start experimenting with some of your, whether it's accidental landscapes or otherwise, where would you point them to?
They can, my website, KarenEckmeier.com, has all sorts of good information. I have a YouTube channel, so Karen Eckmeier will take you there. And the best way to get a hold of me is to email me, Karen at quilted-lizard.com.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that we link everything, everything there below. Thank you so much for being here. This has been such an inspiring conversation, and it's always so interesting to hear about another artist's practice and their creative process, and just kind of hearing what goes on behind the scenes to create the beautiful work that you do. Do you have any other last thoughts that you'd like to leave our audience with?
I would tell them to not not to compete with others, but to compete with themselves.
Mm,
Okay, to better yourself and don't worry about other artists' journey because it's not theirs, and because you can beat yourself up about that. And I just read a quote recently, and I think it might have even been Woody Allen. I'm not sure. He says, "If you hit the bullseye every time, you're standing too close." So
mm,
people need to step back a bit and let their inner artist escape and have some fun.
I love it. Thank you so much, Karen.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you guys for being here. Karen and I appreciate your time and your attention. And I hope that you have found this conversation as inspiring as I have. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.